intelligence.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the App Clinic. My name is Redo Meyer.
I'm Ian Nee Lewis.
And today we're going to be looking at stopwatch and timer apps.
Now, just so you know, today's kind of a weird day. We've got some people out of the office sick. We've got some important meetings going on. So we have a new engineer Joe.
Hey.
Joe is well known for his grasp of linear algebra and his oddly ethnic last name.
So thanks for joining us, Joe. You can tell that they're important meetings because we're here.
Exactly. Now the truth is we did ask Alex to be our producer because we thought with the beard and all.
Absolutely.
But here's what happened. Really odd story. So Alex is a really flexible guy. He does a lot of things. You ask him to do a Google I/O presentation, sure. You ask him to, build a brewery with his bare hands, sure, no problem. Industrial solvents meant to be inhaled.
Arc welding, yeah.
Absolutely. He can do all these things. Asked him to engineer deer in headlights.
I wondered why he was running down the street. That'll explain.
Indeed. Yes. So Alex is a man with a comfort zone, and we have found the edge of it.
It's taken us a couple of years, but we have found the edge of his comfort zone.
Good job.
Yeah, yay us.
All right, let's get on.
Let's get on with it. So we're going to take a look at some stopwatch and timer apps today. Like always, our goal here is not to necessarily find the best stopwatch and timer app, but to try and look at a few and see if we can help you guys out there developing your own Android apps to be able to take your good apps and turn them into really great apps. So what are we going to have a look at today? Big blank screen. Wow, that's going well.
That's
going
not sure
very
what
well.
Interesting.
That is very interesting.
Yeah,
that's a Keynote not helping me out there.
Right, indeed. Yeah, we started doing all of our titles in Keynote because it's so cool, but now
it is
that is
very little to help
sort of
us.
Hilarious. I'm not really sure what. We didn't.
Joe, you should just click back to. No, you're clicking things you shouldn't have clicked. I can hear.
There we go. There we go.
I feel like this is going to go poorly. Should have stuck with PowerPoint. So these are the patients we're going to try and take a look at today. We'll see how we go with our overlays, but we're going to look at yoga timer, we're going to look at timer, alarm, stopwatch and clock, impetus interval timer, hybrid stopwatch and timer, and the ultimate stopwatch and timer. So we can definitely see a consistency in naming there, so that's something. So before we get into it, I'm going to try another transition and see what happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it works. So what we can see here straight away is
I'm just going to screw around with other things. Well, the fact is the camera is not pointed at us correctly.
Oh, wow. So what you can see straight away when we look at today's patients is these are the feature graphics. And so we can see straight away that only 3 of our patients had feature graphics. Hybrid stopwatch, ultimate stopwatch, and one of them doesn't have the name on the feature graphic, which is in and of itself not a bad thing. But what I really wanted to highlight here is when I'm browsing through the market, all of the names are vaguely the same. And so I'm going to try and pick something which looks pretty appealing before I get going. And straight away here, one which really stood out to me was the hybrid stopwatch, which just looks awesome. It's got a great feature graphic, it's got a great icon, and the others really didn't stand out so much. And so I would sort of instantly assume that was the best one, just based on the way it looks. So let's get started, I guess, and have a look at the first of the apps, which is actually going to be yoga timer. And so this is the page that you see on Google Play when you go there. So as you can see, no feature graphics, so that's missing.
Let's talk about that for a second, because I don't think we've really talked about that on the App Clinic. We've talked a lot about how you can make apps interesting. You might want to go ahead and just remove this overlay. Because it's
no.
No?
Don't do that.
Don't ask Joe to do things. Hey, look!
But that we can do.
Okay, rock on. Nice.
I see, you've put yourself in frame, and now I'm off a little.
Yep.
That's nice. That's awesome.
Well, producer Alex did let me know that. Yeah, okay. Hey, dude, I was way over here.
I know you were. I'm not saying that,
You know I was, exactly.
I had set it up. I spent time getting this right.
All right, here's the point. We've talked a lot about how to make a great app on this show, but we haven't necessarily covered the merchandising aspect quite as much. And yeah, there's a reason for that. We're not merchandising people, but there are some things that we can share with you about app merchandising that will really help you, because there are things that aren't necessarily obvious about how you upload your app into the Google Play Store. And the most important thing, the thing that a lot of people get wrong, is failing to include the giant feature graphic. There's one graphic, I can't remember if it's just called X large or maybe it's web or something, but you'll know it because the dimensions are giant. It's 700 by 500 or something.
It's a big image, absolutely.
1024 by, anyway, it's
big.
It's the one that's really large, and a lot of people leave that out. And then you don't really notice it because the phone only uses that in one place. And the only place that image gets used is if your app is featured. Then that image will be used.
That seems important.
But the web page for your app will use that as the main graphic. And you can see that the web page still fits together fine without a feature graphic. It just doesn't look quite as good. But the important thing is we can't feature your app unless that graphic exists. So keep that in mind when you're creating that graphic. A couple other things to keep in mind are that the graphic does get scaled down for different devices. So on a very small phone, for instance, that graphic that's 1,000 pixels wide may end up only being an inch across. So you do need to make sure that your graphic is not only large, but legible at different sizes. Let's go ahead and move on.
Excellent. All right, so we're going to have a look at Yoga Timer. So that's the first piece of feedback from them, is that there is no feature graphic. But let's have a quick look. So we're going to do this the same sort of format that we did last week. We're going to have a quick look through each of the apps, and then we're going to show you guys what we think it takes to make a great timer and stopwatch app, and then have a look at some of these apps in comparison to each other, keeping those prescriptions in mind.
Right.
So let's switch to the phone cam if we can. Awesome work. See, Joe's doing a much better job at this than we are.
Actually, that's true. Now, I spent my week drinking in Maui and doing blow. So Reito's going to review these apps, and I'm going to sit back and have a Black Butte Porter from Deschutes Brewery.
Nice.
Go ahead.
How that goes on. So Yoga Timer is an app designed specifically around being able to create timers for your yoga workouts. So you can see straight away we've got a hollow-themed layout, which is nice. Please add workouts. So we've got a blank screen, but it's telling us what we need to do to make something happen. We've got an icon which has a little plus symbol, which is kind of the Android symbol for click here to make something happen. So let's create a quick workout app yoga. This is what we do before and after each show to loosen up. Let's see, pre-show, interesting.
Now, one thing that applies to this app, but it isn't necessarily a timer app, it's more broadly applicable, is a lot of times you see this thing where this sort of behavior where you have to enter something or create something to get started with an app. And one of my pet peeves is this sort of behavior where I have to create something and it involves typing.
Yes.
And I know that there are people that are more nimble-fingered than I am. Apparently some CEOs compose their entire annual report on phones.
On phones, wow.
But for me, especially when I'm just downloaded your app and I'm trying to decide whether to return it or not, I don't want to have to sit there typing.
Yeah.
Maybe pre-fill those fields with something that sort of makes sense.
Yeah, something which gives you an idea of what the app is for, like a sample, an example workout, something like that. I think would be a good tip.
If you want to go the extra mile, make that something where it will autofill if you don't type, but as soon as you start typing, it'll go away immediately.
Oh, I like that. So let's navigate in here. So again, now there's a second step. So we've got app yoga. Now we need to add a timer for that particular exercise. Oops. Tricky from an angle. So they've got an interesting mechanism here for doing this. So you can drag things along instead of having to type, which is nice. I'm not going to do a 3-hour workout. All right. So now
I'm kind of curious why they don't just use the spinners.
Yeah, it's kind of an odd choice. And we're actually hoping to be able to speak to some of the developers from these apps next week. So some of the question we may pose to them. So yeah, keep that in mind, guys, if you're watching. So now we have an activity and we have a timer for it. We can have multiple activities and multiple timers. And if we click here, things start to happen. And now we have the the standard sort of countdown timer. We can pause. Got some kind of nice little animations in there for pausing and resuming. We have it here in the notifications, and in fact a rich notification, so that's nice. And that's basically all there is to it. So it's a fairly simple app for a specific purpose. And I know that the developer of this is pretty new. I know he was putting this together hopefully in time so that we would be able to review it for the show. So, but straightforward layout. You've got settings behind the settings in the overflow and the action bar. Does what it needs to. The only sort of criticism is exactly as you suggested. You can't get started straight away. You have to do text entry, time entry before you can get started.
Yeah, and we've seen this a lot in focus groups that we've done with consumers, is that they will very frequently only give an app 30 seconds or so before they decide to get rid of it. And you definitely need to grab them in the first few seconds. We get a little jaded about things like tutorials and stuff like that, but I think that if the consumer is comparing a couple different apps, getting them into something interesting immediately is paramount.
Yeah.
The only other thing that I'd suggest is, honestly, I found the ad really confusing because it occupies the same mental space as the list items.
Yeah.
What do you think? I was going to say it maybe should be at the bottom.
About that. The bottom is kind of the more standard place for it.
Right.
Sort of the mental cognition here, it's like action bar and then add and then content. Struck me as a little bit odd as well. So yeah, I'd consider shifting that.
I think the ad is more visible that way. I think you're going to get more clicks that way, but I think a lot of them are going to be accidental. And
you want to be careful about that as well.
Yeah.
A lot of the ad platforms have guidelines against putting your ads anywhere where it may accidentally be clicked. And I'm going to be, in fairness here, it's a little bit tricky because if you put it towards the bottom, you could be trying to hit navigation and accidentally hit the ad. If you put it at the top, you've got the same problem with the action bar. So there's not really an obvious answer, but this, I think, just from a usability perspective, seems like it's going to be too easy to hit the button by mistake.
Absolutely. It's a great app, though.
Yeah, it's a great app. It's nice and clean. We'll get into some of the specifics about it later, but that's the functionality. Nice and simple.
Yeah, they've themed it nicely, which I love that.
Exactly. It's a standard action bar, but with definitely a color scheme that's consistent for that.
Yeah. So, I think the only other thing that I would say is I think that this should probably be centered or something like that. What does it do when you go into portrait or into landscape, though?
Good question. Well, I think it's a list view, right?
It is a list view. Okay.
It'll center it there because we can add several timers here.
Oh, I see. So that's why. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Cool. All right, let's move on.
All right, so let's have a look. The next app we're going to have a look at is timer, alarm, stopwatch, and clock. And as you can see, again, no feature graphic here either. So again, this is an app where when I first looked at it on Google Play, I wasn't expecting much.
No.
It's kind of it's a very busy icon, which if I look at it now, I can figure out what it is, but it doesn't really strike me. And there's no feature graphics, so I was a little bit apprehensive to begin with. The good news is when I actually opened up the app, it's actually pretty nice. So we've got the holo theming right off the bat. It does exactly what we asked for before in that you press the button and it starts.
Yep.
Right? So you got the stopwatch functionality there. I didn't have to do anything other than click it. And right away now as a user I go, oh, okay. Well, this is quite nice. I like the way that it's nice, right?
Yeah.
You've got the Roboto fonts. You've got this ridiculously fast-moving thousands indicator. So I'm pretty happy. I hit lap and I get my lap times. It fades in nicely. It's got more theme.
Oh, that is nice. Yeah, I like the fade in.
It's pretty nice, right? I mean,
there's a few things. I'm really excited to see what Roman has to say about this next week, because to me it seems like they've done everything right and yet something is slightly off. And I think what that means is it needs a designer to just go and kind of lay it out and put the finishing touches on it.
And in fact, I think this is a recent redesign from these guys. I think released just yesterday, or in fact early this morning, specifically so we could check out the new stuff. And so I think as a first pass on a new design, it's looking pretty good.
Not bad.
But yeah, it feels like there may be little things that can be done. So we're going to pause the stopwatch, and we can go to a countdown timer. And so I clicked that, the same as I did the stopwatch, and it tells me that you need to add a counter in order to be able to.
Now, it does that with the toast.
I would kind of prefer that if I do this, rather than tell me that, it just does the equivalent of loading up that button, right? It seems like I can see why you have it here as well. That's reasonable.
Well, but it really reminds me of that. Do you remember the part in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy when Arthur and Ford are in the spaceship and somebody pushes a button and he's like, what did that do? And the guy says, a little light that popped up that said, "Please do not press this button again." That's what I feel like when you do that. It's like, oh, you interacted with my UI, but not the way I expected.
That's not the way you're supposed
yeah,
to do
don't be doing that. I think that I think it's a little more courteous to just assume what your users wanted.
Exactly, and it makes sense. You've got the add counter button here, and fair enough, have that too, but let's do both.
Yeah.
So okay, again here, the button style here is a little bit odd. Again, it's this, it's a very attractive looking app, and then you've got kind of an orphan button sitting by itself, sort of floating in the middle. So I'd consider maybe moving that around, but I'm going to leave that to the design guys to see if they've got an opinion. We've got the standard spinners here, which you can actually see is a pretty intuitive way of changing the time. Yep. So maybe that's a tip for the yoga guys there is, this actually isn't a bad way of doing it.
No, it's pretty all right. I think that the way the yoga guys did it makes sense, but it's just not as intuitive.
Exactly. So we can see here it's added a timer. Again, I would probably be tempted to automatically. So now to set the timer, I need to click here, which then assigns it to here, and then I click it again to get started. Now, if I'm adding a timer, I think it probably makes sense to
automatically select
that for you. I don't automatically
select it. If there's a timer going, maybe you don't want to do that.
Sure. If there's already a timer in action, that's a different story.
What happens if we add multiple counters?
Let's have a look. So we've got a new counter down here. The old one continues. I assume that if we, so once you click a new timer, it resets. I don't know if it wants a warning there or not. Probably not.
Might want to do a confirmation because you are losing work.
Exactly. So you don't want to be like, oh, but I was just clicking it to edit it, and that's not how you edit. Then that's probably pretty annoying. We can see here as well. We have a countdown timer, which is nice. And in fact, I think that's even progressing. I didn't actually notice this before.
That is cool.
But that's really slick.
Yeah.
You can see probably just here the little blue circle representing the amount of total time remaining as well as the active countdown. I really like this. I think this is it shows two things for me. One, that there is an ongoing foreground service running so that my timer isn't going to stop just because I'm browsing and using up all my memory. And I don't need to go back into the app to see how much time I've got remaining, which is fantastic.
Yep.
So again, here we click to pause, or click again, or we can reset. We can delete these. They disappear. All of that works really nice. We have alarm functionality, which works the way you would expect it to. And a nice little tip here as well. They've got a world clock, which is nice. Totally, not something I was expecting to have as part of a stopwatch and timer app, but why not, right? If you're doing stuff with numbers. Overall, the theming I think looks great. We've got, I guess, a full screen button here for the world clock. That's quite nice. Don't know what that does.
Put you into daytime mode.
Actually switch modes. That's interesting.
I like
so
that.
if you prefer the lights,
it doesn't appear to have been designed for. Yeah.
Exactly. So and I note here that I can't actually change it from here. I need. Oh, I see. It's dropped down into the.
Switch theme. Yeah.
It's dropped into the overflow menu.
Okay.
Well, that's interesting. That is interesting. Yeah. That's probably a reasonable way of doing things. Have it in the action bar if there's room. I would say though that this theme looks a little less polished than the dark theme. I think a lot of people prefer the light theme. I think you probably want to tweak your colors, particularly down here around the lap timings a little bit.
It looks like they just haven't gotten around to that.
Yeah, exactly. And knowing that this is a relatively recent release, I say that's fair enough.
Okay.
So this one does a little bit of everything and looks pretty nice.
It's not bad.
It's not bad at all. Let's have a look. We're going to move on to impetus interval timer next. So this one does have a feature graphic.
But it's a terrible feature graphic.
It's not good. It has a huge amount of text all over the place. I should point out that our green screen is what is making the
That's true.
The middle part there. See if you can.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
So nice. So now that would be a much better feature graphic. No. So in fact, that part is us at least. But in any case, you can see here that it's a feature graphic full of text. And one of the big places that this is going to get used is when it's shrunk down for featuring, and none of that's going to be visible. And even still, this is more what you would expect from the screenshots rather than from a feature graphic.
Yeah, in fact, you should never put screenshots in a feature graphic. We will never feature something that just has a screenshot in the feature graphic. And in fact, this goes for a lot of things. Like I've seen games with screenshots in the feature graphic, and that's no good. What you really have to ask yourself is, when you go into a software store, let's say you're going into Best Buy and you're going to buy some kind of software. I don't care if it's a game or if it's a business suite or whatever. What do you see on the front of the box?
Well, it's not a screenshot.
Right? It's usually some sort of beautiful art.
It's
sometimes
branding.
it's conceptual.
Something which makes you go, oh, this is professional. They've paid a designer to do this.
Now, where do you find the screenshots?
Screenshots you find when you're playing the game or the app.
Well, that's not the answer I was looking for,
Probably.
but the answer I wanted was on the back of the box.
Back of the box. Yeah,
Right, but that's okay because I know you only buy software digitally these days.
That's right.
It's all right.
Box.
And
what is this box of which you
exactly. They've completely gotten rid of them in the rest of the world. Here we're still playing football with a ball that's not round. So
Weird.
the point is that you do want to have screenshots, but the place that they go is in the little screenshot column where everybody expects them to be, and you should have something beautiful and conceptual in your feature graphic.
Exactly, and you've got a nice icon as well. It's exactly the idea we're talking about. It's conceptual, it's artistic, it looks nice, gives you an idea of what it is.
You know what? Actually, I have to mention that since you brought up icons,
Sure.
the one thing about Yoga Timer that really needs to change is its icon.
Yeah, looking at it now, I agree.
Yeah, in general, the guidelines for Android icons are that it should be the outline of the icon. It should not be a square or a rounded rectangle or anything like that.
I think is, or a distinctive outline, I think is the guidance.
Exactly.
All right, so let's have a look at Impetus. If I can click it. So right away, I start this up, and this one's a little confusing. It's not obvious to me straight away what's going on. There's a lot of text on screen.
Well, apparently you've finished.
Well, indeed. So let's move on. That's not fair. So that's kind of the biggest challenge here, is that you need to figure out what is going on. And so if you click on edit, you get an idea that, oh, okay, so this seems to be some sort of exercise timer rather than just a straight up timer. So that's themed and that's fine. But again, nothing was obvious about that in the name or in the feature graphic. Nothing was telling me, hey, this is an exercise timer. So go back to timer. And I click on stuff, that's not doing anything. You can hit go, no time set.
In a toast again. Please do
toast.
not press this button again.
Okay, so now I've got some presets. So I can say, let's do the pyramid preset.
Oh, okay. So now we're gonna.
And now we're gonna work out. So we don't exactly know what it is that we're doing. I don't know what pyramids are, but that's probably.
I thought I knew what pyramids are, but I'm struggling to make it make sense with this.
So the overall way that it's displaying things with the progress timer here is nice. Showing us the total time and the time for each repetition, or in this case rest, is nice. We've got I've got lots of notifications. Let's see. Alright, so we can see that we've got an Impetus session in progress. It isn't rich, it doesn't show the ongoing details, but at least it
gets you back there,
going, which is a good start. We can pause.
Oh, I know what it's doing. Yeah, right. It's you do a little rest, you do a little more than rest, you do a little more than rest. Yeah.
Okay, so it's this I've heard of this as a way to build up your endurance training for running and stuff.
I guess so. I've never done it with time. I've always done it with reps, but that's because I have no endurance, nor need for any endurance, really.
Fair enough.
Just raw strength.
Raw strength. That's what it's all about. So you can see we've got these alarms, and these kind of fall off the edge of the screen here. You can see that there's some clipping there, which isn't great.
Yeah.
And this whole dialogue is a little odd. Like, how do I dismiss it? Is it a back
Right.
button? It is, but it's not a
Now,
standard
is
dialogue.
that
Which
at
is
all
strange.
hooked into the? No. In fact, check that out. I'm just pressing the volume keys.
Okay. So I've overridden the volume
That's
keys, but
yeah.
I guess maybe if we bring this
but
up.
certainly not in a.
No, that's just very strange. Yeah, so
I'm at a loss to explain what they've done
something custom's been done there, and it's not something good.
That's right.
Let's see. So this is how we create new presets. So I was clicking here. We can use the existing presets. Abandon the current session. So you can't browse for a new set while you're doing one, which I guess makes sense because if you're in the middle of exercise, you really shouldn't be looking at new things. And then you can do all of your new presets. Save preset, again, seems like if you created a new one, you already should have been able to save it.
Well, that's true. Actually, seeing a save button in general is sort of a bad smell to me in UI design now. It used to be important because you were saving to floppy disks or something, right? But for a long time, the only reason to have a save function is that so you can give whatever it is you're saving a name. when you don't need a name, or if you can give it a default name, you should just save automatically. There's no reason not to.
Alright, so then I guess I have to save. Yeah, so the workflow around this is kind of complicated and not entirely obvious. I'm going to leave the guys from Android Design in Action to sort of go into some of the details.
I don't know if they're going to talk about this one. It's got.
I think they are. I think they like a challenge.
I don't know. Okay, but all I'm saying is I don't want to be anywhere near Roman on Monday.
Well, see, now this is where Roman's being very clever. He's not in on Tuesday, so the other guys, Adam, Nick, Rich, they're gonna be doing the design show with Roman's help in creating some mocks, but the rage will be elsewhere on holiday, probably drinking.
I'm joking a little bit, but the truth is that this app breaks almost all of our UI guidelines. There's custom buttons that don't quite work. There's these buttons down here. You can't quite see them. Just lift that up. It's difficult to tell on the screen, but these buttons have a little border around them, which A, they don't need, B, looks shabby.
Yeah.
We call that the X motif style of Android design. We're trying to get away from that.
Yeah. So I mean, this seems like it's a fairly useful app. I like the that it is themed. It's not just a timer. It's able to build a workflow around timing. But I think the workflow around being able to get things set up and going is a little bit contrived. It's a little bit difficult to understand. And the overall look and feel, I think if we compare it to some of the other apps we've looked at today, could do with a little bit of work.
Absolutely. Now, I just wanted to break in for a second and remind everyone that's watching that producer Alex is monitoring the live stream diligently. Right?
That's what diligent looks like.
So if you have anything you'd like to ask or some comments you'd like to make, please go ahead and let us know, because we do this live for two reasons. One, so that we have an excuse for all the mistakes that we're sure to make. And two, because we'd like to have your input.
Absolutely. So let's move on to the next app, which is going to be the hybrid stopwatch and timer. So this
now, I want to buy that right now.
It really caught my eye, right?
Yeah.
So I clicked through like a dozen or so timer and stopwatch apps when selecting them for today's show. And I got to this and I was like, oh, I can't wait to play with this. This looks cool.
That's like beautiful.
And it's got this great icon, this massive feature graphic, which is just totally in your face. And if you compare this to the screenshots we took of the other listings, it's just night and day, right?
Yeah.
It's like, clearly someone's put in some effort here. And to be honest, it looks like it's basically effort done once. Like they've put in the effort to create something which is an awesome looking stopwatch, and then they've just used that as their theme throughout. And I have a hunch that when we open up the app, it's going to look pretty similar, which is exactly what you want. Give people the idea of what they're going to get with, without having to get to, screenshot like.
Right.
Okay, so let's have a look. So hybrid stopwatch. We open it up, and boom, looks like exactly what we would have expected.
I believe that's what we call in the business skeuomorphic.
Possibly, yeah. So as you can see, it works as you would expect. We hit start and it starts, and we see the timer along the top going off. We see the little dial going around, which is nice. Stop stops it. Nice. The button depresses and underpresses. Now this doesn't use the Android design guidelines at all, but I don't think it's necessarily a problem. Now I know that the guys are going to look at this as well. I'm sure they've got some ideas to make it a little more hollow-like while still maintaining the same sort of overall look and feel. But just generally speaking,
this is great.
I'm not bothered that there's,
Yeah, and that's one thing that we should say too. Is I think that a lot of times on the show we're saying, oh, well, they don't have an action bar or they've messed this up. And the truth is, we don't want every app to look the same. We want all Android apps to look the way that's going to be most effective.
That's right.
So when we say you're not following the design guidelines, what we usually mean is it looks as if you might have been trying to follow the design guidelines and you got it wrong. These guys went a completely different way.
They really did.
It's intuitive. It's very beautiful. Great.
Yeah, everything.
We have no problem with that.
Nice. Like everything works the way it would, and I really like their attention to detail here. So when I press stop, if I hit reset, it's actually going to move the needle back, right? That's nice because that's what a mechanical device would do.
Absolutely.
You go along, you hit lap, and it leaves a little marker behind for each of our lap timings, which is nice. Let's see. Now it does use the old style menu button, which is a bit of a shame.
What is it?
But it does do stuff. So we'll lift it up here. So you see, we've got the menu. given that you have a menu button, it would be kind of nice now to have an action bar to hold it in that more modern style.
Right.
You've got such a nice looking app, it's kind of a shame. But if we go through each of these, the lap times, it's all, again, same sort of, oops, you can't see it, same theme, style, consistent, which is nice.
I will say that, as we've said before, the gradient effect can look really nice, but when it's just applied over and over again, it sort of looks like, wow, I guess somebody got a hold of Photoshop this week.
Yeah, it's a little bit of the lens flare effect. It kind of looked cool when no one else could do it, but now everyone can do it, and it doesn't look quite so cool.
Yep.
Send laps, unfortunately, this should just be a share intent rather than email and SD
card.
Oh,
absolutely.
Just let me send it however I want. If I want to tell my friends on Twitter how fast I can run, then I should be able to do so.
Yeah.
Now we can switch to timer is kind of the other key here. So they've kind of got a custom standard thing.
Which is too bad, because this is how Android used to work, and it wasn't very easy to use.
No.
And now we've gone to the spinner that you can fling, which is a much better design, and it's too bad to see this sort of thing still popping up.
And this is a real risk that you have if you go, oh, I almost like what the platform has done there, but I want to create something which looks a little bit nicer, so I'm going to modify it slightly. If then the platform changes under you and you get stuck with a slightly nicer version of a crappy old way of doing things, rather than sort of straight away getting the advantage of the shiny new way. So just something to keep in mind.
I first noticed this in Windows 95 when I was working with Novell, and they had a whole set of apps where they'd rewritten parts of the windowing system. And so I don't know if you remember, Windows 95 came out and they had the 3 buttons on the right, and they had the title moved over to the left side, and Novell still had all these old windows that looked like Windows 3.1, and it was terrible.
It's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. But yeah, you can see how you could move some of the activity that's going on here into an action bar.
Sure, and the action bar would say whether it's timer or stopwatch. You'd have potentially tabs or something to be able to switch between the two. I don't want to step on the guys from Android app design in action. So
right, but I did want to point one thing out about that, which is we've called this the button of shame, and it's a little bit obviously you shouldn't be ashamed of having a menu. The main reason to switch to the new technique, though, is because action bars work in one very specific, predictable way, whereas this button is actually now being implemented in many different ways by different manufacturers.
This is very true.
All right.
So you can see the timer actually works nicely. It goes in a reverse direction to the stopwatch, which is intuitive, makes sense. We can see the overall time being displayed as well as each minute. We can see we do have the timer set up here as well. It does display in the notifications. Again,
not as cool as that other one, man. That was the best.
It is updating, but only every minute.
YouTube wants to know if it rotates.
Does it rotate? No.
Nope.
Sadly, it does not.
Sorry, YouTube. Was that a particular commenter, or just YouTube as an entirety?
It was a particular commenter.
Oh, okay.
All right.
So someone on YouTube.
Someone on YouTube.
Who was it?
BRK5.
BRK5.
Hey there, Burk5.
It does not rotate. Okay, so I think that sums this up pretty nice. So we're going to do a really quick stop at the Ultimate Stopwatch and Timer by team member Richard Hindman. Is it Hindman? I don't know.
I thought it was Hindman.
I don't know.
And then I sort of laugh. I snicker a bit.
I know.
Yeah,
that's kind of why I don't.
All right, Rich, let's see your app.
We've only known him for like 3 years. God forbid we know his name.
Sure, Rito.
Ian, nice to meet you.
Oh, you don't know what you've just uncorked.
You've got the teeth to be an Ian. Ooh. Wow. Awkward.
Okay, let's go.
Ultimate Stopwatch and Timer by Geek You Up. So this is truly skeuomorphic. So this looks like a picture of a stopwatch. And if you press it, the little stopwatch thing depresses.
Oh, that is cute.
It's pretty nice, right?
I have to say, though, I like the last one better, because when it's actually a picture, it's a little less obvious what's active and what's not.
Yeah, this is true. And, everything kind of works the way you want. You hit save time and it does lap times. He's using a toast to tell us that, which is a little unfortunate.
Why are you using a toast, Rich?
Come on, man. Each time. So, and we can start and stop. We can do all this sort of stuff, which is nice. We can display the lap times. He's got an action bar going. We can switch to timer mode. which actually changes the color, which is kind of interesting. And yeah, again, works the way you would. Doesn't use notifications at all. Unfortunately,
Yeah, it'd be nice to see a rich notification
rich
there.
notification from Rich.
Alrighty then, let's.
We're too much.
Yeah, absolutely. In the last 5 minutes, let's cover the last 30 minutes of our show.
Indeed.
So
we're going to try. Oh, I wonder what was going on with the transitions at the beginning. Just enough to try and screw
Right?
me over and keep me
Right?
nervous for the rest of it. So these are the things that we think really are required to make a great stopwatch or timer app. So it's don't contradict the design guide, which is a little bit different to what we have said in the past, which is be consistent with it. And here we're thinking, well, we've looked at these, and there's a bunch of different ways of showing the time. So don't feel like you have to stick to a sort of standard list view action bar sort of paradigm. Go outside the box. Just don't contradict anything which we say that you should be doing, and make sure that it's intuitive. Include the functionality for timer and stopwatch, because I don't want two separate apps. If I have one app which does one really well and one app which does both almost as well, I'm going to install the single app. Notifications, foreground service as we talked about, and keeping it simple, really easy to use as you step through. So we're going to look at...
now I have to say, Reto, I didn't say anything before because when you put this together, I was still in Vegas coming down from a really bad acid trip. But the one thing that I noticed on this list that is missing is widgets.
Widgets. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I did not even think to check if they had widgets. So let's have a look. Let's see. Analog clock, Beyond Pod. Got a lot of things installed from previous weeks, but I'm not seeing any for.
Because it sort of seems like a natural.
Well, the problem with, I think one of the problems that you have, I guess you could use it to start things, because you just don't want to have a widget which is getting updated as a timer.
Okay.
Because that, you only really want to be updating your widgets every, I think, 20 minutes, something like that.
I see.
But as a quick way to start it, and then have it within your notifications would actually be pretty neat. Yeah. So that's a good call. So yeah.
But that's a good point. So this is, one of the reasons you didn't put widgets on is because updating widgets are expensive. You don't want to have that just going on all the time.
Exactly. But having the ability to just have a set timer on my home screen or be able to kick off the stopwatch as a timer, and then it automatically starts displaying things here. So now Ultimate Stopwatch does tell us when it's complete, just not while it's ongoing.
Right. Yeah, I think the what I loved was the one that actually counted down. Although the one thing that I would have done differently, but tell me if this is possible, because I'm not too familiar with the notification code. Would it be possible to actually animate that a little more? Because if you've got a long timer, it's just going to crawl forward, right? And I've noticed that what basically all of the operating systems we work with have moved towards is this paradigm where if your progress bar isn't making much progress, at least it'll be animating. I think Mac does a barber pole effect, and Windows kind of has a shimmer, and I don't know what Unix does or Linux does because I am not geeky enough. But
too much time in Vegas, not enough time in a shell. Exactly,
and you'll notice I don't have a beard, which means I may or may not be able to program.
That's true.
So if you can code, there's no reason to shave. Here's the thing, though. If your progress bar is not going fast, having some animation at least lets the user know that something is happening. And I was wondering, well, could we put in a little shimmer or something in that?
I think you probably could. I mean, as they've got the outer edge going, having something in the middle just happening to show that it's ongoing, I think would be an interesting effect. I don't know that there is. I don't know what overhead is associated with updating your notifications at that frequency.
Now I think about it, it can't be that bad because we do that in the download manager.
That's true. We have the little, it's downloading.
I think it's actually just an animated image.
Yeah.
So what I would do is an animated image and then just overlay that arc on top of it.
That could work.
Yeah,
that
absolutely. Okay, cool.
So let's have a really quick look through. We've only got a couple of minutes, literally, so we were going to spend a little bit more time contrasting and comparing. But again, in terms of the design guide, I think really the hybrid stopwatch is kind of one of the most interesting deviations from the design guide, which still look good. And I do have been given a preview as to what the guys will be looking at on Tuesday during Android Design in Action. And I know that they have an interesting take on this app, so that's definitely something to tune in for. And the other one, which I think is sort of close to being there, but not quite, is this, which is I think this is a really nice effect. Looks really consistent, nice coloring, nice theming. just I think needs a little bit of tweaking to get it really spot on. So these are kind of the two alternatives. One
Well,
which
now wait a
uses-
second. Yoga Timer.
There is Yoga Timer, that's true.
So I would say
Timer,
Yoga
pretty
Timer
close.
nailed it,
Yeah.
except for the icon.
Except for the icon. Yeah, that's the thing about Yoga Timer. It's a great app. They've done a really good job of theming it. They just aren't presenting it as well as they should be ahead of time. So, yeah. Other things, multifunctional we talked about. So again, I think this is where time control really does win hands down. It does everything that you'd want to do consistent with time, all in one app. So that's kind of nice. Rich notifications. We saw a couple of apps. Was it? I can't even remember. Was it?
I think, yeah, this one had it, right? No?
I thought so, but possibly not. Maybe it was just on the countdown. Yeah, there we go.
There we go, yeah.
Countdown, but not stopwatch, which kind of makes sense. Kind of doesn't. I'd like to have it on stopwatch as well.
Yeah.
So this is really nice. And there was another app as well, which allowed me to, which had rich notifications. I can't remember which one it was. Was it Impetus, perhaps? No.
No, it certainly wasn't that. Well, in any case.
Yeah.
So, I think it was Yoga Timer,
I think it was. Yeah, it probably was Yoga Timer. That's right, it was Yoga Timer.
Look at you. It's like you've
Sorry,
forgotten about Yoga
you know?
Timer.
It's a good app. I just don't do yoga. That's my problem. There you go.
Right,
So that's
there you go.
the perfect.
Yeah, that's
implementation.
great.
you
Having a
combine-
notification is there for information, and it's a call to action.
Exactly.
And this combines that perfectly.
So if they steal a trick from time control here and actually include a time countdown within the notification itself, you've pretty much hit the perfect notification.
Absolutely.
Time is over. That's yes, very true. A foreground server. So anything like this, anytime in order to have a foreground service, that is a service which isn't going to get killed by the system at runtime when there is memory pressure, means that you have to have a notification displayed. So any of these apps which don't have a notification displayed, and this is true for most of them in stopwatch mode, means that they could theoretically get killed by the system. So that's something I wouldn't really want to have happen, and something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
And keep it simple. I guess that's the real trick, the ones that I enjoyed the most, and this is why I guess I keep forgetting about Yoga Timers, because I have to do so much work before I can use it.
That's true. Yeah, you had to. There was a lot before you could just jump in.
Oh, so
Where if you contrast that with, I think it was Impetus, for instance, just had some presets that were there already. They have a very, very complex system.
They do.
But they had 5 or 6 different things that you could just choose from to get started.
Yeah.
Time control was just all there. Hybrid stopwatch was just right there.
Exactly. So
Where
these
you
apps
get what's
which
on
just
the
let
tin,
you
right?
Press the button and boom, you start, and you understand exactly how it works. That's kind of the ultimate, and even something like time control, which has quite a lot of functionality, but it's all pretty easy to find.
Yeah, and then Rich's ultimate stopwatch, I would say is a close second behind hybrid stopwatch. But for me, the addition of this sort of photorealism added elements that didn't seem germane to the application.
Yeah.
I was a little confused by it. I wasn't sure what to touch and what not to. Maybe that's just me, but I think it took skeuomorphism one step too far. Yeah.
So sum up. So these are each of the prescriptions we've just gone through, and we've talked about each of those apps. And so here they are, summarized for your pleasure. We won't go through these in much detail, but you can keep track of how many of the green dots exist. And it's timer, alarm, stopwatch, and clock, which does the best here. It kind of does everything we asked for. It could do a little bit more with the rich notifications in terms of the stopwatch doesn't use them, but that's kind of nitpicking at this point.
And everybody should learn from Yoga Timer about rich notifications.
Yes, Yoga Timer is the go-to there. That really demonstrated the right way to do this.
If I could just combine Yoga Timer and time control, that would be perfect.
That would be pretty good, yeah. We say, oh look, Rich, you've got some work to do, Rich.
Rich!
So that's pretty much all we've got. We're totally out of time.
Right. Did you put green dots, by the way, on the things that were good?
I did, because I am that stupid. That's right.
So the dots that appeared transparent, that meant good.
It's exactly what they meant. Red meant bad, transparent meant good.
Exactly.
It's a tip for those of you at home wanting to use chroma keys and green screens for your overlays.
Yes, you're also discriminating against millions of colorblind people.
That's true.
But
next week it'll be all green backgrounds with small red text. Good luck with that. So let's have a reminder of what's coming up. So Android Design in Action is on Tuesday. It was their first episode last week. They had a huge audience, so that's fantastic. Hopefully you guys will tune in again on Tuesday. That's 10:30 New York time, and what's that, 3:30 in London. And they're going to be taking a look at these two apps, which is Impetus and Hybrid Stopwatch. So I think those are the two that they're definitely going to check out on Tuesday. We've also asked the developers, so all of the developers that we talked about today got in touch with us over Google+, and I think it's something we talked about a little bit. I didn't run this past you ahead of time, so hopefully you're free next Thursday, but I thought it might be fun to spend half an hour after we've ripped these apps apart and the app design guys have given them ideas of what they should be doing instead, to get some feedback from them once they've had a chance to digest what we tell them.
Absolutely, that's a wonderful idea. I'm excited to be a part of it.
Awesome. So we will see the guys from each of these developers next Thursday at 11:30. That's Pacific time. You can get all of the schedules and stuff at.
We're going to run that live too?
Why not?
Because who knows what these developers are? They might say something.
That's true. Well, they
might say something naughty.
Well, this is the fun thing, is that none of them are native English language speakers. We've got Austria, Sweden, and Spain, I think, all represented, or at least those languages.
Nice.
So it should be fun.
You know, the first thing you learn in English is swear words.
Excellent.
Any foreign language. That's
You're going to have a big red button, just in case.
Sounds good.
All right. Friendly time.
Well, we are completely out of time.
Next week we're going to look at photography apps. So,
excellent.
Anything which messes with a photo. So things like your Instagrams, like your paper cameras, anything like that. If you've written an app, if you want us to have a look at your favorite version of that, and let the developers know what you could be doing differently or the right way to implement those sorts of apps.
Right, but you know what? Don't just nominate those hipster apps, okay? If I have to look at one more 70s style photo, my eyes are going to bleed. Let's talk about some really cool apps that you can do photography with.
Like
and
Instagram.
Shut up, hipster! I throw it on the ground! All right.
You know his glasses aren't prescription?
No, of course they're not. And his fixie actually has gears. They're just hidden in the hub.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do, though, is take a look at photography apps. We're really super excited about it. Let's hopefully we get some actual photographers on here. I know Dan Pham is quite a photographer.
He really is, yeah.
We're going to look at how these apps can make photography easier and more fun.
So that should be good. So I think that's all that we have for today. We have about 3 minutes before Dan, and I think you're filling in today.
I believe, yes, I'm filling in for the games review, which is completely at odds with my new haircut and my stylish hoodie.
Yeah, that's kind of grayscale there.
Yeah, it's a Boss, but see, the brand is called Boss.
Uh-huh.
It's by a man named Hugo.
Interesting.
Boss.
Hugo, wow.
Yeah.
Nice. We have a Boss Hugo.
That's true, we do.
Yeah. Nice. So,
All right.
So we'll be joining Dan, his headwear, and Hugo Boss clad Ian Neil Lewis in just a few minutes for the Friday game review. We'll be back again next week at 1 p.m. looking at photography apps. So until then, thank you for joining us, and see you next week.
Bye.